rosary is more than just a string of beads, it's a weapon, a communication tool, and a portable retreat. There's a reason it's been ingrained in Catholic culture for centuries. Many soldiers are rosary devotees. It brings them peace when nothing else can during a war. During times of war, military victories achieved through the rosary motivate and inspire soldiers. Every soldier wishes for peace. This peace can only be obtained by praying the rosary. Here is a timeline of many of these military victories achieved through the rosary, beginning with Saint Dominic and ending in modern times. You will quickly understand why the rosary is so beloved and relied upon by those serving in the armed forces. Year 1213, Victory of Muret. Saint Dominic taught the Christians to pray the rosary while they were fighting the heretical Albigensians. Before the Battle of Muret, the Christian army prayed. The victory at Muret laid the groundwork for a long history of military victories through the rosary in the years to come. Later, in Muret, France, the first chapel dedicated to the rosary was built. The Grace of the Word is a book telling Saint Dominic's story, which includes his role in the rosary and the victory of Muret. Year 1627, La Rochelle, France. When King Louis XIII declared war on the Huguenots, he instructed his subjects to pray the rosary with the goal of achieving French victory. Citizens were not the only ones who prayed. More than 15,000 rosaries were distributed among the soldiers. Every day, the soldiers prayed aloud together. The army of King Louis was victorious, and this battle is remembered as one of the miraculous and triumphant military victories achieved through the rosary. Year 1571. The Battle of Lepanto. The victory at Lepanto is the most famous and significant of the military victories attained through the rosary. On October 7, 1571, the Turks attempted to invade Christian Europe at Lepanto on the Greek coast. The Pope urged Catholics to pray the rosary in the hope that the Turks' attack would fail. 3-1, the Christians were outnumbered. Against all odds, and thanks to the rosary prayers, the Christians were victorious, sinking 200 Turkish ships and killing 50,000 of their men. In commemoration of this miraculous victory, the Feast of Our Lady of the Rosary is now celebrated on October 7th every year. This famous battle inspired G.K. Chesterton, a famous author, to write the poem Lepanto, which chronicled the exciting events of that day. Year 1683. The Battle of Vienna, Austria. The Turks attempted to retake Europe once more. A small garrison led by a wounded general fought valiantly to defend Vienna against 300,000 Turkish invaders. The victory demonstrated the power of the rosary, and the Turkish invaders were kept at bay. This battle is also remembered as one of the rosary's most famous military victories. Europe's armies banded together and marched to their aid. They prayed the rosary as they marched. The power of the rosary was demonstrated once again in their victory, and the Turkish invaders were kept at bay. Year 1716. Petarwardein, Hungary. The Turks continued to provoke Europe even after their defeat in Vienna. The people prayed the rosary once more because military victories had been proven through it, and they knew how powerful it was. The Christian armies were led to victory over the Turks by Prince Eugene of Savoy. At this time, the Pope directed that the entire Church observe the Feast of the Holy Rosary in remembrance of the victories won through the power of Mary through her rosary. Year 1815. The Battle of New Orleans, America. The triumph at New Orleans is the first of the rosary-inspired military victories to take place on American soil.
To the left.
Despite being vastly outnumbered, Andrew Jackson led a small army to victory during the Revolutionary War. What did he have to thank for his triumph? The prayer of the rosary. Many of the soldiers' families gathered and prayed the rosary during the battle. Despite the overwhelming odds, they were confident that the power of the rosary would bring them victory, and their faith was rewarded. Year 1945. Hiroshima, Japan. During World War II, a priest and 7 others survived the nuclear bomb that was dropped on Japan and had devastating effects. Despite living near ground zero, scientists were astounded that these survivors were free of all radiation-related harm even years later. What set this group of people apart from other nearby victims? Devotion to the Rosary. They prayed the Rosary together every day. Book description for Francis Johnston's Fatima, the Great Sign. When the atomic bomb destroyed Hiroshima in 1945, 8 men living near the blinding center of the nuclear flash miraculously survived the searing hurricane of blast and gamma rays, while everyone within a mile radius perished, and others living further afield continued to die from the lethal effects of radiation. Over the course of 30 years, over 200 scientists examined these 8 men, attempting in vain to determine what could have saved them from incineration. Father H. Schiffner, S.J., one of the survivors, gave this dramatic response. In that house, we were living the message of Fatima. Year 1955. Austria. The Austrian people prayed the Rosary to overcome what appeared to be the inevitable in the face of the threat of communist occupations. Many Austrians have been praying the Rosary every day for 7 years. The communists then withdrew without cause. Year 1966 and 1975. Through the power of the Rosary, both Brazil in 1966 and Portugal in 1975 were spared communist rule and are regarded as major triumphant military victories. In 1961, the stage was set for taking over Brazil, but guess who thwarted the communist takeover? The women of Brazil with their rosaries. We could never have stopped Brazil's slide toward communism if it hadn't been for the women, said one of the counter-revolution's leaders. Dona Amelia Bastos sat with her husband and a group of anti-Reds one night in mid-1962 as they discussed the looming threat of communism. I had an epiphany, she said, that politics had become far too important to be left entirely to men. Furthermore, who has a greater stake in what is happening to our country than we women? She founded CAMD, Campaign of Women for Democracy, and in Belo Horizonte, 20,000 women recited the Rosary aloud, disrupting a leftist meeting. In one of the most moving demonstrations in Brazilian history, 600,000 women praying the Rosary in Sao Paulo sounded the death knell for the communist revolution. These women, holding rosaries or wearing them around their necks, issued a 1,300-word proclamation. This immense and marvelous nation that God has given us is in grave danger. We have allowed men with limitless ambition and no Christian faith or scruples to bring misery to our people by destroying our economy, disrupting our social peace, and instilling hatred and despair. They have infiltrated our country, our government, our armed forces, and even our churches. Mother of God, protect us from the fate of martyred women in Cuba, Poland, Hungary, and other enslaved countries. Thank you for watching. Please like the video and subscribe for more.